Hey everyone, it's Rob. I'm back. Did you even notice I was gone? If you did, I had a good reason. I was hunkered down writing a book with my dear friend and business partner, Gino Wickman, called Shine: How Looking Inward is the Key to Unlocking True Entrepreneurial Freedom. It will be released on March 26th, 2024, and you can pre-order now on all bookseller sites. Now, before I hop in, I want to share something that my bestest friend in the whole wide world, Joel Perlman, is up to, because it's extremely special and a huge need in this world. It's an innovative organization to help individuals with special needs called the Danny Plan. It was inspired by his daughter Danielle, who is nonverbal and has autism. The Danny Plan is for your loved one with special needs, including but not limited to individuals with cognitive issues, disabilities, and elder care needs. The Danny Plan is simple, secure, and easy to share. With the Danny Plan, you can organize important information, store it in one place, and share it with trusted family, caregivers, doctors, and more. And you can make it as unique as your child, with as much or as little information as you want. It's completely customizable. The Danny Plan can host the following content: about me, key people, medication and therapies, behaviors and frustrations, daily routines and schedules, communication, education, and more. And because it's protected by data encrypted technology and two-factor authentication, families get peace of mind while loved ones get the respect and dignity they deserve. I've been using it now for a couple of months, and I have to tell you, my mind feels at peace because for the person that I'm a caregiver for, I now have all their information in one place that's very easy to access and update and share. Please check it out at www.Danny, D-A-N-I, plan, P-L-A-N.com. That's DannyPlan.com. All right, now on to my guest, Andrew Holecek. Andrew is an author, speaker, and humanitarian who offers seminars internationally on meditation, lucid dreaming, and the art of dying. He is the author of many books, including The Power and the Pain, Transforming Spiritual Hardship into Joy, and Preparing to Die: Practical Advice and Spiritual Wisdom from the Tibetan Buddhist Tradition. His work has appeared in Psychology Today, Lion's Roar, Tricycle, Buddha Dharma Magazine, Light of Consciousness, and many other periodicals. He also hosts the popular Edge of Mind podcast, conversations with leading-edge thinkers in the field of science, philosophy, spirituality, psychology, integral studies, and the arts. Andrew is the founder of the International Nightclub Online, a membership website that hosts an international community of students and teachers interested in meditation, lucid dreaming, and the nature of reality. Dr. Holecek is a member of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine and the co-author of scientific papers on lucid dreaming. He is also the co-founder of Global Dental Relief, which provides free oral health care to children in developing countries. He holds degrees in classical music, biology, and a doctorate in dental surgery. And you can learn more about him at andrewholecek.com, AndrewHolecek.com. That's andrewholecek.com, and that will also be in the show notes. Now, our conversation is filled with thought-provoking nuggets of wisdom, so please enjoy my chat with Andrew Holecek. Andrew, thank you for joining me today on the Leading with Genuine Care podcast. It is an honor, actually, to talk to you. I've really been looking forward to this.
Well, thanks for the opportunity, Rob. I look forward to the conversation as well.
So, what we're going to start is we're going to talk about every one of those books behind you.
There
Start
we
with the
go.
one on the upper left. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like we could actually. But no, I'm going to start with a quote, and I'll share it with you. And then, if you wouldn't mind giving me what kind of comes to mind for you. So it goes like this: if you don't know how to live, then you don't know how to prepare for death either. So the question is, how do you want to live? Do you want to live as an awakened being? And that is a quote from, and I will not say this properly, so you may help me, Anam Thumpton Rinpoche.
Yeah, Anam Thupten Rinpoche.
Thank you. Thank you. So what comes to mind when you hear that?
Yeah, well, it's similar to the title of my dear friend Pema Chodron. She wrote her book on this topic, how you live is how you die. And so what comes to mind really is, at the most elevated levels, if you want to go right to the summit, is fundamentally there's no difference between how we live and how we're going to die. I mean, like what Kabir once said, the poet, right? What is found now is found then. And so it's really, to me, about living fully, completely, thoroughly. And then when we do so, at least according to the Tibetan views, they talk about three highest relationships to the end of life. One is people actually look forward to the moment of death, not as in this weird suicidal way, but they realize it's literally a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Others approach kind of middle tier. There's absolutely no fear. And then the third of the highest levels is absolutely no regret, because you lived your life not really on pilot light level, but with the gas fully turned on. It's like Suzuki Roshi said so beautifully, you want to live your life like a good bonfire. Don't be a smoky fire, And so I think it has to do with that if you live your life completely, fully, and fearlessly, you actually get to the point where you realize there really is no fundamental difference. I mean, Milarepa, here I am tossing out these quotes, right? So Milarepa, the great Tibetan poet master, once sang beautifully, not seeing the here and hereafter as differing, this is instruction as master as it can be. So that's the most elevated end of it, that really the awakened ones truly see that it's all a manifestation of mind. They see no fundamental difference. And so it goes all the way from more over-the-counter colloquial preparations to these really lofty ideals of what enlightenment may actually be like.
Mm-hmm. So you wrote a book called Preparing to Die: Practical Advice and Spiritual Wisdom from the Tibetan Buddhist Tradition. And I'm wondering if you can share what is the best way to prepare for death?
Yeah, okay. Well, similar to what you were just intimating is become familiar with your own mind. Because, in other words, meditate. And I'll say more about that, because really death is a journey into and through the mind. When we say mind here, Pali Sanskrit, same word for heart, mind, heart. So the best way, there are a number of ways to prepare, but perhaps the penultimate way is to become familiar with your mind and heart now, before, in a certain sense, you're forced to do so. I mean, I actually look at death as a wrathful form of liberation. And by that, what I mean is you're actually heading towards the greatest opportunity in your life, as I was alluding to earlier, if you're fully prepared. And so if we can be prepared through these practices, then you have this attitude, been there, done that. I've gone through these practices. I've developed an intimate familiarity through these meditations. So there's fundamentally no surprises. I mean, so many wisdom traditions will proclaim, and my experience echoes this assertion, that the spiritual path in general, meditation in particular, is really kind of death in slow motion. It's a way to, I mean, letting go is just a euphemism for death, right? I mean, when you die, you're going to be forced. That's a wrathful form. Non-negotiable, uncompromising release. You have to let go. Well, the wisdom traditions, starting all the way back to the Sufis, and I mean, this quote is attributed to so many different traditions, but if you die before you die, then when you die, you will not die. So the point is die now, let go now. And then you get to the point like His Holiness the 16th Karmapa, pretty realized being, allegedly, in fact, not allegedly, I heard it say just before he died, nothing happens. Well, for someone who's already done this type of release, you're just transitioning from one dream to the next. Nothing really fundamentally happens.
Mm-hmm.
So, on a little bit more colloquial levels, one of the best ways to prepare, let's say you're not a meditator, you're not a practitioner, one of the best ways to prepare is just live a really full life, and a life of goodness, because the force of your habits, or in Eastern language, the force of your karma, that's what's going to take over when you die, just like in a dream. That's why death is literally talked about in the Tibetan arena as the dream at the end of time. And so if you're not awake in your dreams, what controls your dream experience? Your habits, your karma. And allegedly, exactly the same thing happens at the end of time. So another way is to just lead a really good life that you'll be taken care of by the force of that goodness. And then one last thing, and I'll come off for air. I'm really big on the nocturnal meditations, of which dream yoga is a principal one. And so dream yoga really largely came about as a Tibetan way to prepare for death. So there's a couple noodles.
That's perfect. And you segued me right into my next topic. So I really appreciate that, because you write about dream yoga. You wrote a book called Dream Yoga, Illuminating Your Life Through Lucid Dreaming and the Tibetan Yogas of Sleep. So could you explain what is dream yoga and lucid dreaming, or are they the same?
Yeah, not quite the same. Yeah, thanks for the plug of the book. It's the second book in my, what I call my dream trilogy. So I have two others. And so, well, let's start with lucid dreaming, because there's a bit of a progression here. So lucid dreaming is that wonderful state when you're in a dream and something clues you into the fact that you're dreaming. So you attain consciousness while still dreaming. It's sometimes called a hybrid state, where the conscious mind can face the unconscious mind directly. And scientifically proven since the 70s, has massive benefits, actually physical benefits, psychological, and then at its higher frequencies, spiritual benefits. And so in my languaging, there are these, what I call 5 nocturnal meditations. And we can talk about the one previous to these 2 and then the 2 after, if you like. Okay. But lucid dreaming is, in dream yoga, or smack in the middle. And lucid dreaming is really just for purposes of distinguishing it from dream yoga, largely about self-fulfillment, psychologically oriented, and basically for purposes of self-fulfillment. And that doesn't criticize it at all. It just situates it. Dream yoga transcends but includes lucid dreaming. So it uses lucid dreaming as a platform, but it transcends it. And therefore, it's more spiritual in nature, and it's more about self-transcendence rather than self-fulfillment. And so in a certain way, there's some akin to meditation and therapy in waking life. And therapy, I've heard it said, I like this, is that therapy is about keeping the dream from turning into a nightmare. Meditation, spirituality, is about waking up from the dream. So it's just deeper. And so with dream yoga, which is usually where I roll, there are 9 classic stages. These are my enumeration of the 3 classic stages. I just unfold them a little bit more. And they go from quite accessible and fun to super profound, super deep non-dual states, which then can intimate the death journey. So it's a marvelous arena of practice that allows us to bring this vast untapped reservoir of natural resources, which is the unconscious mind, into conscious awareness, and therefore engage in a, what I playfully call as a type of night school, kind of hyper-pedagogical approach, where you can just learn. Just to check out the math, right? So we spend about 25% of our time in REM, rapid eye movement sleep. That's usually when we're dreaming. That's a month a year. Over the course of a life, that's some 6 years. You can get a PhD in less than 6 years. So if you attain lucidity, my friend Stephen LaBerge, who proved this in 1977 at Stanford, he's one of the real pioneers. He estimates that we enter the dreamscape, the dream environment, 500,000 times during the course of a life. Whoa. Imagine how much you can learn if you attain lucidity and work with your mind. And not only is it the opportunity to add more life to your years. You can't add years to your life, but you can add life to your years. You're also, because you're working with more foundational dimensions of your being, you're working with the deeper, subtle substrate, the roots of your experience. The Tantric traditions assert that what you do in the dream arena is 7 to 9 times more efficacious, more transformative, because it's more foundational.
Mhm. I have some practical questions for you and you have a wonderful download on your website about lucid dreaming and dream yoga. So I encourage, and we'll have links for that.
Nice.
But from a practical standpoint, the first question I have for you is, let's just say a person needs 8 hours of sleep.
Sure.
And they're dreaming and they decide to practice this idea of lucid dreaming. Are they then taking themselves, in a sense, out of their sleep and having to do a little work? And does that disrupt their sleep time?
No, not if it's done right. If you're doing sleep yoga, yoga nidra, that's a different story.
Okay.
But when you're working with lucid dreaming, dream yoga, no. I mean, the brain actually is as active in the dream state as it is in the waking state. And so quite the contrary. My experience with it is it invigorates me. I wake up from these things, we have this colloquial expression, waking up on the wrong side of the bed. We know what that means. Really powerful dream, let alone a hyperlucid dream, because lucidity occurs across a spectrum from super short to quite long, from barely lucid to hyperlucid. I mean, you wake up from a fairly hyperlucid dream, it's waking up on the right side of the bed, and it will transform your entire day.
Mm-hmm.
You wake up and you go, wow, that was just amazing. So even neurophysiologically, when you're engaging in these things, the alpha, the brain patterns are the same, are very similar to the waking state. And so therefore, if it's done properly, it doesn't affect your sleep.
Okay. And if you were teaching 101, what would you suggest somebody do to practice this?
Okay, well, 2 things. One is deeply connected to what we just talked about. The number one really infrastructure technique in the dream yoga tradition, you won't find this in lucid dreaming, is meditate. And then I'll give some of the more classic ones like intentionality and that kind of thing.
Okay.
So why do you want to do that? Well, again, it's similar to what Kabir said of death. What is found now is found then. And so the main reason we have so many non-lucid dreams is we unwittingly practice non-lucidity all the time. And by this, what I mean is you simply have to sit in silence for a while, meditate, even for a minute or two, or just look at your mind, and you realize how often we're entangled, caught up in the contents of our mind. We're always being hooked into non-lucidity / distraction. So the synonyms for lucidity, a lucid dream is a mindful dream, a non-distracted dream, a remembered dream. A non-lucid dream is a forgotten dream, a distracted dream, a mindless dream. Well, hello, we practice distraction and mindlessness all the time. So the reason we're virtuosos in the art of non-lucidity at night is because we unwittingly practice non-lucidity during the day. And so this is actually quite important, because this introduces this kind of bidirectional vector, these 2 vectors between the waking and the dreaming state. And it's actually quite important, because the whole notion here is you want to cross-pollinate, using my playful language. You want to develop this kind of interstate commerce, ferrying insights back and forth between 2 previously disparate states of consciousness, the waking state and the dream state. And so this is the great contribution of dream yoga. It's like a form of consciousness hacking. You hack into that state of consciousness, you do all these quite remarkable things in the dream state, and then you don't just leave it under the comforter of darkness. No, not at all. The insights that you do, the practices that you do, ping back into your life. They pop up into your life, and I can give you a specific example of how that works. And it changes the way you live your life. And there's, again, neuroscience for this, right? Studies have shown that when a person is in a dream state, and let's say they're dreaming about some kind of logical thing, I mean, their left hemisphere is activated precisely in the same way that would be activated during the day. I'm a pianist. I will sometimes dream of playing the piano, Beethoven Sonata, in my lucid dream. Put me in a scanner, my right hemisphere is activated in the dream, just like it would be in the day. Your brain cannot tell the difference between what is dreamt and what is experienced. And so using the principles of neuroplasticity, right? What you do with your brain, with your mind transforms your brain. Well, there you go. You're doing the stuff in the dream state. It is affecting you whether you know it or not. And so if you do it in an overt conscious fashion, again, this is the hyperpedagogy. You can really accelerate your psychospiritual development by targeting it in this kind of bidirectional way. And that's really the whole point. Dream yoga is situated quite beautifully between both the death thing and the life thing, because in a certain sense, it pings back into life. Lucid dreaming leads to lucid living. Lucidity is a code word for awareness. You're just more aware. But hey, wait, if you buy now, it's not just 2 for the price of 1. If you order in the next 20 minutes, it's 3 for the price of 1. It's a 3-fer, because not only does it ping back into life to lead to lucid living, it pings forward into death to lead to lucid or conscious dying. And so understanding this is really important, because otherwise most people hear of it and they go, well, that sounds kind of interesting. But our lives are so busy, we're so full. I mean, ego puts a big do not disturb sign when it comes to sleep. Don't touch me when I'm sleeping, right?
Yes.
Don't disturb me. Well, that's just ego speaking. And so you may want to be so disturbed if you realize just the enormous potentiality of exploring the nocturnal mind using these skill sets.
Mm-hmm. So when you say, I think one of the first steps you said was intentionality. Do you do that with intention before say, you go to bed?
Yeah, intention is key. So if you're not a meditator, the next kind of best infrastructure technique is intentionality. In fact, I attended a dream yoga training a number of years ago, which is not done very often, with a very high-level Tibetan master. The only induction technique he gave was intention. The word etymologically, intend means to stretch towards. So what you want to do through the power of intention, and this can be done by restating during the day over and over and over, almost like a mantra. Tonight I'm going to have many dreams, really mean it. Tonight I'm going to have clear dreams. Tonight I'm going to remember my dreams. I'm going to wake up in my dreams. And so you set that intentionality. And then that is, especially as you're falling asleep, it perfumes your sleep. I mean, we know this through the laws of association, that if we're all stressed out and wigged out, hey, you fall asleep, you tend to have wigged out and stressed out dreams. No surprise. So using the principles of good Eastern and Western sleep hygiene, and I'm a member of the American Academy of Sleep Medicine. And so what I do is I bring both the science and the medicine of sleep from the West, from my training, in conjunction with this amazing skill set from the East, to bring this kind of double-barreled approach to lucidity. But the idea here is you do it, especially when you're going to sleep, you kind of ramp it up, you increase that level of intentionality. And then there are a couple other things you can do. There's all sorts of tips and tricks that you can do. And then, you go to sleep. And as you start to change your relationship to the nocturnal mind, you start to realize all the potentialities. You start to believe it more. What do they say? I'll see it when I believe it. So if we believe in the power of these transformative practices, we're more inclined to actualize them. So it's kind of a positive placebo effect.
Mm-hmm.
You tend to actualize it. And because we have such a dismissive relationship in the West to dreams, right? It's just a dream. I mean, that's a pejorative statement. It's dismissive. Well, on one level, there's some credibility to that level of dismissiveness, because the highest levels, dream yoga dismisses the reification, the solidification of the waking state, which is why we suffer so much. So on one level, that level of dismissiveness is appropriate. But on another level, if we realize, and this is actually quite amazing, according to the wisdom traditions, and in about 90% of the world cultures, there's about some 4,000 world cultures, roughly. Probably 90% of those are what are called polyphasic. It's only the Eurocentric cultures, of which we are members, 10%, that are monophasic, wake-centric. And what they assert is the only way to know mind and reality is through the waking state. No, that's ridiculous. I mean, that's hubris. The wisdom traditions, the non-dual so-called Eastern schools in particular, I mean, they derive their views of mind and reality from all 3 states, waking, dreaming, and dreamless sleep. And so therefore, according to those views, we've got to completely back asswards. This is the most asleep state. This is the most asleep state. If you see this world solid, lasting, independent, raise your hand. We all see it that way. If we see the world dualistically, you're asleep. That's what it means to be asleep in the spiritual sense. You're snoring. So as we actually fall asleep, as Rumi said, we fall into wider rings of being. We're actually falling awake. If you're lucid in the dream state, Thoreau said this, right? Truest life is in dreams, is when we are in dreams awake. If you're lucid in the dream state, it's a truer dimension. If you lucid in the deep dreamless sleep state, this is Yoga Nidra or sleep yoga, the fourth of the five. This is the truest of all dimensions, which is why Ramana Maharshi, the great Advaita Vedanta teacher, said, that which does not exist in deep dreamless sleep is not real. That's an amazing statement. So again, I toss all this out there because it's like, whoa, it's like, wait a second, I never thought about this. I didn't realize there was so much potentiality in the nocturnal.
Right.
So,
to use your example, if you were having a dream about playing the piano,
yeah,
then you bring that to a lucid state and a more awareness while you're sleeping.
totally.
Right. Now, do you then begin to play in the dream? Are you actually, is the dream changing in any way?
Absolutely.
Yeah. Can you?
Yeah. And one thing before I say what's actually taking place with the playing the piano thing, this is also important to throw into the works. Yeah. It's like when we're working with dreams in the dreamscape, what are we really working with?
Right.
We're working with mind. What are dreams made of? Dreams are made of mind. So you're working with a mind in a really refined, distilled environment. And so, yeah, so I will conjure up. Sometimes I do it intentionally beforehand. Sometimes it just happens serendipitously. I'll conjure up, hey, why not? A nice 9-foot German Steinway, right? And then I will sit down and with complete volition and intentionality and a lucidity as clear as me talking to you right now. It's really just like this, because this is a dream, by the way. I will sit down and I will play the piano. And I'll play an entire movement of a Beethoven sonata, Opus 27 or whatever. I mean, I play most of them. And lo and behold, and you can watch, there's a wonderful video on YouTube of an elite dreamer, German dreamer, who learns how to refine a swimming technique in his lucid dreams, learns how to play the ukulele in his lucid dreams. So this is not just hyperbolic. I mean, this stuff actually is being substantiated more and more in the labs around the country and the world. And Matthew Walker, who's a neuroscientist out of UC Berkeley, he says quite potently in his book, Why We Sleep, it's a fantastic read, by the way, he quote, "It is entirely possible that lucid dreamers represent the next iteration in Homo sapiens evolution." End quote. And so I can give some neurological backing to that if you want it. That's an outrageous statement, but I can say a little bit more about why there's some credibility to that. But I just want to make sure I take this under direction.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I'm going to take, I think, a step back, but then maybe we could go there. Okay. So one thing that I've learned and I guess would be a belief of mine about dreams was, what meets the eye in a dream isn't actually, there's a deeper message in there. So you might, if you could remember your dream, you might begin to learn how to analyze the dream. Now, I'm not suggesting I'm a practitioner of that, but this is a belief that I've had in my life, and learning about you, I'm thinking more about all of these things, which is really wonderful. So can you speak to that and help me?
Yeah, that's a good point. That's actually a good point. So this is a really magnificent thing about the dream world. There's an entire array of engagement with the dreaming mind. And so the 5 nocturnal meditations is one way to work with them in a, I mean, dare I say, a more elevated way. Mm-hmm. But the realm of dream interpretation is colossally important. I mean, starting with Freud's monumental The Interpretation of Dreams, and then in particular, the seminal work of his principal student, Carl Jung, who's worked with depth psychology. Dreams are colossally important in the level of dream interpretation. And I work with this all the time. Not all my dreams are lucid. And then the non-lucid ones I treasure. And they can, in fact, send messages from the unconscious mind. I mean, what did Freud famously say? An uninterpreted dream is like an unopened letter. Fantastic. Well, the wisdom traditions would say, well, why was the letter sent in the first place? So it goes deeper, right? But let's say I have a non-lucid dream and I just had one last night, almost daily. There really, it can be a dream of precognition, or what's called a prodromal precognitive dream, a dream that can portend the future and literally save your life. It can be a dream that can help others. I mean, the dream arena is a magical dimension where the limitations of space and time. See, this is interesting. When you're only limited to the waking state, you're stuck in the laws of causality in space, time, and physics, and everything's kind of concretized and reified. Well, one of the reasons you can do all these amazing things in the dream is because reality is partially de-reified in the dream state. Hence, the laws of space, time, causality, and physics don't apply. This is why you can fly and do all these amazing things, because you're no longer in such a contracted state.
In your dreams.
Yeah, and exactly. And then what you do, the fruition of this sort of thing, is you then take these same insights, you bring them into the waking state, and you come to this unbelievable liberating conclusion that, like my friend Tenzin Wangyal Rinpoche says, I just love it, this is a dream. I am free. I can change. That's colossal. What an insight. We feel we can't change because we're so identified. We're in a particular spectrum of identity. The world is so solid. Everything's so solid. We feel so trapped and fixed. That's not the nature of the world. That's the way we've made the world to be. But in terms of the interpretation thing, oh my gosh, it's incredibly important. And the one thing you can do with lucidity is not all lucid dreams have to be engaged. You can engage in what's called a witness lucid dream, or also called pellucidity, where you're completely aware of what's arising, but you elect to simply watch it.
Oh.
So lucid dreams in that regard, they get some criticism from the psychological community, but that is misinformed. Because if you're engaging in pellucidity, it's not like you're somehow interrupting the flow of the message stream from this kind of postal service, right? You're just simply, you can watch it in a lucid way, and you're going to remember it a lot better. But this is the great thing. So many different ways to engage what's being offered in the dream arena, all the way from this sort of thing, all the way to the ultimate preparation for death itself.
Okay. I think I only have one more question on this topic, but I can't promise you.
Okay,
This is so good. So you mentioned you may even be able to, you said something about in a lucid dream, you may be able to ensure that you didn't have a death. So is that like a premonition or something like seeing the future?
Yeah, but the literature is replete. You just have to dig in. I can give you just one of many examples. Well, two right off the top. One is Oliver Sacks in his fantastic book, The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat. There's a really wonderful chapter in there called, I think it's called The Disembodied Woman or something like that. This is a woman who had a very powerful precognitive dream the night before her surgery. She didn't adhere to the warning. And in fact, the outcome that she didn't pay allegiance to came true. I had the same thing 2 years ago. Almost 3 years ago, I had a very, very powerful lucid dream predicting a set of physical situations, illnesses. And I wasn't able to completely, I was like, boy, this is a really important dream. I wrote it down, I studied it, I sent it to my elite dream interpreter friends. And for whatever reasons, I was not able to completely decipher the message. And I was afflicted with a non-trivial illness, completely predicted by the dream. You can also go on YouTube. I can't remember exactly what the link is, but click in dream prediction of airline crash. And it's a haunting film about this gentleman who, for night after night after night, for I don't know how many nights, predicted the American Airlines crash in Chicago some 40 years ago.
Wow.
This stuff, once you dig into the literature, this stuff is everywhere. And so if you have a very sensitive relationship to your mind, Carl Jung talked about this, very often in the wisdom traditions, they're unequivocal in their assertion. Habit patterns, what they call karma, it ripens at the level of the DNA of the mind, the germinative stages. It ripens at the level of these subtle dimensions. And even Jung said this, that if you develop sensitive relationship to your dreaming mind, you can purify these habits, purify these karmas in the dream state before they manifest from the blueprints into constructed reality. And so quite literally, these dreams can save your life, literally. But it's all a bit, again, about, wow, open your allegiance to it, realize the extraordinary capacities. And then it's almost like you're opening lines of communication with your deeper self. And then once they realize, so to speak, quote unquote, that the conversation is open, somebody's listening, then these lines of communication are facilitated. And it's just amazing how often things can be predicted, because you're dropping, again, space, time, causality are constructs. These are not the scaffolds of reality. Einstein intimated this. Physicists today, check out the link, Space-Time is Doomed by Nima Arkani Hamed from Princeton. Space-time are constructs. And so if you deconstruct it and enter these deep dreamless states or very deep dream states, you're in a dimension of reality that's pre-temporal, pre-spatial. And this is where this kind of otherworldly precognitive stuff takes place. So you can explain this. And so again, a greater allegiance to these dimensions can really save you a lot of time.
Is that what you meant when you said, kind of a few minutes ago, you said, this is a dream? As we're talking right now, you said, this is actually a dream.
Yeah, it's not exactly, I mean, the connection there is not entirely clear from what you're saying, but the fruition of this whole business is in fact to come to that conclusion, which is of course what the Buddha, right? The Buddha, the ultimate lucid dreamer, his name literally means the awakened one. Well, what did he wake up from? What did he wake up to? He woke up from the nightmare of a solidified, reified reality. That's why we suffer. That's the nightmare. Is mistaking everything to be so real. That's archetypal non-lucidity. That's nightmare principle, is reifying, solidifying everything. He woke up from that nightmare to a de-reified reality, a reality that's empty in nature, the dream. And this is the classic, again, this is not just metaphysical mumbo jumbo. These are the classic descriptions of reality from a quantum theory, from the point of view of the physicists. Not that we need to capitulate to what they have to say, but all the teachings on what are called emptiness, everything in the dream yoga world circumambulates these teachings on emptiness. The physicists say exactly the same thing. Reality is a construct. It's illusory in nature, and that's why there's such a resonance between these world wisdom proclamations and what quantum theory has been saying for the last 100 years. It's pretty cool.
It really is. You have this great community called Nightclub.
Yeah.
It's a growing, intentional community. And so if you're interested in lucid dreaming or dream yoga or many of these other types of topics, I encourage you go on to Andrew's website and take a look at that. You also have an intensive week-long retreat called Wisdom and Well-Being, which will focus on lucid dreaming. That's March 16th to the 23rd at Blue Spirit Retreat Center in Costa Rica. So talk a little bit about the experience that'll be for those that attend.
Well, you're very kind for both of those. I appreciate the plug. Yeah, so the Blue Spirit thing is I try to do at least 1 or 2 retreats during the course of a year. We just booked another one in a beautiful resort in northern Italy. It's not posted yet, a place called Mandalay in October. And so it's basically a lucid dream yoga, which is taking what we're talking about here and just really unpacking it, going into it in extraordinary detail, using the great contributions from the East and the West, practicing the meditations that bring about lucidity, using some of the Western augmentation techniques, even some herbal supplements that enhance lucidity. And then all the different stages of what you do with these things. The medical approach, again, because of my training in sleep medicine, how to work with insomnia, sleep apnea, kind of the classic top 10 sleep disorders. So that's the way I roll these days, kind of an integral East-West approach, bringing the best. So usually by the end of the week, the vast majority of people will in fact have a lucid dream. But even if they don't, we work with practices that will absolutely open the doors into these dimensions. And then just one brief word, since you gave me the opportunity, about Nightclub. This is a platform we started some 4 years ago, maybe 5 at this point, when people would say, okay, this is really interesting stuff. I took this program. Now what? Like, I don't know. So we finally started a platform as a way to support people around the world to engage with a community of like-minded practitioners, 400 hours of content, all kinds of offerings. Every week, 3 to 4 offerings a week, where people really get the support they need. Because this is, meditation is a solitary journey to begin with. And the nocturnal meditations are even more solitary. I mean, you are doing this on your own, alone. And so having a sense of community and camaraderie is also really helpful.
Yeah.
Thanks for the
Great.
plugs.
Yeah. Now you have another book called Reverse Meditation.
Yeah.
And I just thought I'd start by asking, what do you mean by reverse?
Yeah, sure. Yes, my most recent book.
Yes.
What's the subtitle? How to use your pain and most difficult emotions as a doorway to inner freedom. Yeah, so this tradition, this word, reverse meditation, comes from the Buddhist tradition. I learned it in my 3-year meditation retreat. In the context, this may mean something to some listeners in the context of what's called the Mahamudra tradition. And they're called reverse for a number of reasons. One is how they reverse our relationship, excuse me, to unwanted experiences. Instead of running away from them, which actually only makes them worse, we're given a skill set that allows us to go directly into them and therefore transform obstacle into opportunity. So they're called the reverse in that capacity. They're also called reverse because they're the reverse of what people usually think of as meditation. Meditation for many people is chilling out, getting zen, and otherwise just becoming tranquil. I'm not criticizing that at all. But, tranquility sedates, it doesn't liberate. And they're actually near enemies. They're near enemies to the mindfulness revolution. And there's near enemies to the way people view meditation altogether. And so, as I often say, these practices, reverse meditations, they're quirky, they're unusual, and they're optional. Nobody, you don't have to do them. But then I always say, well, is pain optional? Is old age, sickness, and death optional? I don't think so. And so if you really want to extend and expand your sense of meditation, like I playfully say, by putting your meditation in reverse, you'll find yourself going forward. Because now you're bringing more and more onto your path. Instead of just living in the incubator of sequestered early stage meditation, which again is important, but you can't live your life in an incubator. If you do, that's just classic spiritual bypassing. So in order to get off the cushion and enter the world, and in particular, really accelerate your psychospiritual development, these practices are a treasure trove because they'll show you how to relate to intense physical pain. And again, I'm a retired dental surgeon, right? So I wrote hundreds of thousands of narcotic medications. I know all about the pathophysiology of pain. I've been involved in research studies with scientists in their labs, in fMRIs, doing pain stuff. So again, like my other work, I bring this East-West approach. So it isn't just this like, well, this is all spiritual mumbo jumbo. No, this has scientific traction. It has empirical evidence-based traction in my own life. And that's one reason I'm so passionate about this new book and these new sets of practices that are slightly akin to Jon Kabat-Zinn's amazing work with mindfulness-based stress reduction, MBSR. But again, if I can be so bold, transcends but includes. I would say it's MBSR on steroids, because it allows you to go into any unwanted experience using a skill set that, again, just radically transforms your relationship to pain. So you can, through these sets of practices, I mentioned earlier, space-time causality or constructs. Well, through these practices, you can deconstruct suffering back into pain, because pain and suffering are not the same. Suffering's an inappropriate relationship to pain. So you can deconstruct suffering back into pain, and then you can actually deconstruct pain back into what it really is, which is nothing more than intense, raw sensory awareness. And by doing that, seriously liberating. Seriously. So, physical pain radically altered. I had kidney stones, when I was first working with this stuff. I had one of the most painful situations you can have. And I brought this set of practices to bear in this intense physical pain. And it completely radically transformed it. You can also watch one fruitional aspect of it is watch this video called Burning Monk, the self-immolation of Thich Quang Duc during the Vietnamese War.
Yeah.
Here's a man sitting in complete meditative equipoise as his body is being consumed by flames. It's one of the most impactful things you'll ever see. How can a human being do this? Well, who knows what he was engaging in, but probably some set of practices like this. Also applies to emotional states. You're in a heartbreak, you're dealing with grief, these practices help you relate to really difficult emotionally intense experiences in a new way, and allow you to experience the fruition is to allow you to experience the spiritual dimensions of everything, the non-dual ways, the ways to find non-duality, and experiences that we would previously deem the most anti-meditative, anti-spiritual. Hurt. It's like, that's not spiritual, it hurts. Well, it can be spiritual if you relate to it in a proper way.
You write about contraction, and is this what you're speaking to right now?
Yeah, so contraction this is a big one. This has this kind of alternating current of contraction and expansion, or my languaging, this kind of combustion cycle of the whole path.
Mm-hmm.
Is contraction is in fact what transforms simple pain into complex suffering. And so I spend a lot of time in this book talking about contraction, the omnipresent super contractors, things like anger, fear, intense grasping. Those are the intense super contractors. And then the omnipresent super contractors are things like distraction. Every time you're distracting, you're contracting.
Mm-hmm.
Every time you're pulling away from the present moment, you're contracting. And so what I do is this kind of turtles all the way down thing, basically using this process of reductionism in a healthy way. I attempt to reduce all our suffering to these fundamental principles of contraction. And this is an important term because it's not just some intellectual capacity thing, right? Contraction is something you can feel. And so through these practices, in particular, the practice of open awareness, you create a new kind of contrast medium that allows you to better detect all the different ways that you contract, and therefore all the different ways that you pinch yourself, all the ways that we're unwittingly causing ourselves anguish, and therefore just empowering ourselves. And so the contraction narrative is a really big one. So we work with, again, practices of identifying it. Once you feel the contraction, you start to open to it. Once again, obstacle is transformed into opportunity, and everything just basically starts to expand. So yeah,
Some of the ways I like that you wrote about it is you said to accept it. It's like good pain.
Yes, exactly. Being able to say yes is kind of radical acceptance, radical equanimity, human condition. I mean, where show me where in the life contract does it say life is supposed to feel good, right? So unfortunately in the West, we all live in our little comfort bubble baths where we have these comfort plans, and that's what we deem to be successful in life. Hey, I'm not dissing that. I like a margarita in a bubble bath as much as anybody else. But you may notice this, if you spend more and more time in your own comfort zone, it gets smaller. You get more fussy, you get more particular. I mean, look at the rich and famous. I mean, your comfort plan gets smaller and smaller and smaller. If the world isn't the way you want it, you're going to suffer. You engage in these mind-opening, mind-expanding practices, you expand your comfort zone, you work with these, and then, hey, guess what happens? Your comfort zone gets bigger. And you actually get to the point with the fruition of these practices, develop this, what's called the great equanimity, this complete ability, radical acceptance to say yes to whatever arises. This doesn't mean naively acquiescing. This doesn't mean you don't engage in traditional pain management strategies, not at all. This is just a powerful supplement to them, using what Norman Cousins and others have talked about is the greatest pharmacy, the most powerful pharmacy of them all, which is your mind. So yeah, they're tremendously empowering practices. They show us, they're revelatory and they're empowering. They basically will show you, if you want to blame someone for your agony or your ecstasy, look in the mirror. Nobody has the power unless you give that power away. So it's like a peaceful transfer of power back to its rightful source. Nobody or nothing has the power to affect you adversely unless you imbue it, confer it with a power it does not inherently have. And you do that, this is where it ties into dream yoga a little bit. You do it by reifying, by solidifying that person, that thought, that phenomena. You take it to be so bloody real. So the fundamental narrative between all this stuff is this narrative of construction and deconstruction. That every time we contract, that's a kind of egoic, samsaric construction project. I like to think of the ego as the world's fastest construction company. I mean, fundamentally, it creates our sense of reality every time we open our eyes. And so once we see that everything is constructed by our own unconscious machinations, well, guess what? Now we have a choice. Again, we're free. We can choose to deconstruct. We can choose to let go of all these things that previously imprisoned us. And so that's why these practices are really empowering.
Mm. Can you speak to the 3 phases of meditation and explain them?
The 3 phases.
Body, breath.
Yeah. Okay. So this is getting in the weeds a little bit, but that's fine. These are the 3 more more technical stages of the first of the 3 meditations I talk about in this book. So there are 2, just to situate it for listeners, before one gets to the reverse meditations, because they're so antithetical. They go against both nature and nurture. Without some preparatory practice, instinct's going to kick in. And when you are experiencing anything unwanted or untoward, those instincts, habit patterns kick in and you're out of there. Forget it. So there are 2 preparatory practices. The first one is what you're intimating here, which is the standard practice of mindfulness, or specifically what's called shamatha, the practice of tranquility. And so in the book, I just articulate those in 3 phases. The body phase, which is all about posture and attaining the correct kind of frame of the body that then cultivates a correlative frame of mind. And then second phase is working with the speech element, which is breath, which is where you're basically attaining a relationship to the movement of your breathing. And so those 2 phases then create kind of canvas or contrast medium that allows us to work with the 3rd phase, which is the mind phase, which is actually what people usually think of as meditation. So those 3 phases are just a wonderful, I think, wonderfully helpful way to talk about the 3 classic stages of mindfulness shamatha, so that when you engage in it, you have a somewhat successful result. And then again, in the narrative of transcend but include, then just ever so briefly, the practice then that matures into is the practice of open awareness.
Yes, thank you.
It goes farther, it gets bigger. That becomes the real crucible for the reverse meditations. So there's that whole, probably in addition to the reverse meditations, the biggest aspect of the book is the introduction to the practice of open awareness.
Why do words trigger us so much?
Why do words trigger us so much?
Mm-hmm.
Well, because we impute, again, it's this transfer of power away, through our training, through our enculturation, we just load up fundamentally neutral words, which again, you can deconstruct that even into just language. You can deconstruct language words into simple compression and rarefaction sound waves. And so words have power because we give them that power. I mean, if I was to suddenly speak in French or Italian or mumbo jumbo, which probably some of what I'm saying sounds like mumbo jumbo, it doesn't have a power to affect you because you haven't had a chance to condition it and to impute it and to give it that power.
Right.
So this is another instance of how it is that we're always throwing boomerangs that are coming back to whack us in the back of the head every time we confer upon phenomenal world a status it does not inherently have. And language is a big one. I mean, I'm not going to do it, but if I blurt out a 4-letter word or the N word, these are really offensive, charged words in our culture. You take those words into some Amazon jungle, it's going to mean nothing to those people, right? And conversely. So these are revelatory of the ways that we're always giving our power away, imputing onto language, onto others, onto the phenomenal world itself, a status it does not inherently have. This is part of the construction project. So when you understand that, then you can start to deconstruct it. And one practice here is actually to take a neutral word, try it. Take a neutral word like car and say it 300 times. After about 30 times, the word no longer has any meaning. You've deconstructed it back into sound. Now take another word, the F word or the N word. It's going to take more than 30. It's probably going to take 100. Why? Because you've conferred upon those charged words a power they don't inherently have as well. But through these practices, you can decondition, deconstruct, and then you're liberated from these things. And then you start to realize, wow, I'm the one that's giving away all my power every time I do this.
Yeah, I thought that was a wonderful suggestion in the book to pick a word and repeat it over and over like that and watch it dissipate over time.
Deconstruct. It's so
Yeah.
cool.
All right. One last question for you.
Thank you.
I saw that a picture where you met the Dalai Lama, and I'm wondering three things about that. What was that like for you? What emotions came up for you? And did you notice any sensations in your body
Oh,
at that
totally.
time?
I happen to have it right here.
You have the picture.
Oh yeah, because
How can you not, right?
yeah, right, exactly. So
There it
here
is. There it is. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for
this is
sharing that. Perfect.
yeah, this is in Dharamsala.
You went there.
Oh yeah, I've met him a number of times, and we spent a whole afternoon with him that day.
That's amazing.
Oh, he's the Dalai Lama is a true treasure of a being. He has a tremendous impact on so many people, me included, and it's just with great beings like this from this tradition, Buddhist tradition, and others. These are people, I think they're so transformative because they've done this amazing inner work. They've gone through in the Indic traditions. I don't want to get too conceptual and intellectual because your question is more an emotional one, but these individuals have gone through this process of hearing, contemplating, meditating. They do the teachings, they listen to them, they contemplate them, they work on them, and then they meditate upon them. And it's, in my languaging, it's a process of ingesting, digesting, metabolizing the teaching, so they become you. And that's the whole point. That's the point of everything we're talking about today, is to have these teachings become literally incorporated in your soma, in your body.
Yeah.
So that you feel it when you're around someone like this. His Holiness's Tibetan name is Kundin, which literally means presence. And when you're in his presence, you feel it. He doesn't have to say a thing. He transmits the teachings through his very presence because he spent lifetime or lifetimes embodying it. And so for anybody that's even mildly open to these great individuals, they can transform you because they transmit and reflect the potentialities of the human condition. So I adore him, as I do many masters from many different traditions, but he ranks pretty high for me. And so when I'm with him, it's always an experience of tremendous love and devotion and opening. That's the other side of the contraction thing, is the openness thing. And so Buddhas, sometimes they're called the awakened ones, but they're also, the word is sometimes translated as the opened ones. And so when you're in an environment of a being who's so open, who completely exposes himself in this deep spiritual way, and you have some receptivity, some openness. I mean, Vladimir Putin probably wouldn't have the same fit kind of feeling because he's so contracted. But if you're a little bit open, you can meet his mind space, and it will change you. It's profoundly inspiring. And to me, it's one reason it's so fun to be with these things, right?
So great. Thank you. Andrew, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me and bring this type of conversation to the forefront for our listeners at Leading with Genuine Care. And did I leave anything out? Is there anything that I should have asked you or that you'd like to share that I didn't ask you about?
Yeah, maybe one last simple thing. I talked about hearing, contemplating, meditating. That can seem to suggest that somehow meditation is the fruition. Well, not quite, because the final stage is action. And maybe we can end on that note, that the final stage is taking what we're doing. And this is my rant these days, Rob, is that if what we're doing isn't a benefit to this planet, isn't a benefit to others, it's irrelevant. It's just spiritual bypassing. It's just spiritual feel-good stuff. So to me, applied translational is a scientific term, translational spirituality. Take these things, bring them into your heart, bring them into your body, and then get out into the world and vote, right? Get out into the world and do something to help the world. Otherwise, what we're doing, it really is irrelevant. And these traditions will go extinct. We as a species will go extinct. We've entered the Anthropocene. We're in the 6th great mass extinction. This is not rhetoric. And so it's all hands on deck time. Take this stuff, bring it to heart, then bring it to life.
Make an impact. Thank you so much. And To all the loyal listeners, I greatly appreciate you spending time with Andrew and I today. And as always, I wish you much love and gratitude.
Thank you, Rob. Nice to spend time with you.
Thank you.